Hi, and welcome to the 21st Century Writer Podcast, where we talk about writing, publishing, and most of all about the mindset you need to flourish and thrive as an author in the 21st century. With all the shifts and earthquakes and trembles in the publishing industry, it's never the same from day to day. I'm Hannah Steenbock, a German author and coach, and with me is my co-host,
Diane Patterson. I'm a novelist and blogger. And today, our very special guest is
Sandra Schwab. Hi, nice to meet you, and thank you for having me.
And what do you do, Sandra?
I write historical romance. I'm a German author, just like Frauke, but I write it in English.
Today I'm Hannah.
Like Hannah. You are here, Hannah. Okay, good. So, just like Hannah, I am German, but I write in English. I've been doing so for the past 15 years, and my first novel was published 10 years ago. In 2005, The Lily Brand was published by Dorchester Publishing, and so were the next two novels. And at the time, Dorchester was a really exciting publishing house. They were taking some risks with stories and with authors. But then in 2010, they stopped paying authors and cover designers and stuff like that. And they eventually, it was really nice. Wonderful. Just what you always want to experience and want to go through. And then in 2012, they eventually folded down all their assets, that is, the rights to our books were auctioned off and sold to Amazon, and we could, to Amazon Publishing, and we could decide whether we wanted to have our rights back or to go with Amazon. And because the whole thing had been so traumatizing, I decided I would want my rights back. And that's when I ventured into self-publishing, basically. And I've been doing that ever since.
I have a friend who went through the Dorchester thing, and it worked out pretty well for her, but yeah, it was a terrible time when it was happening.
It was really bad, and there were also a couple of bad things happening in my day job, so it was, oh my god, so horrible. But yeah, I'm really glad that we've all got through that, and most of us found we got our rights back, or the others went with Amazon, and that was fine as well. So yeah.
Yeah, you were quite lucky that the rights were bought by Amazon, I suppose. I mean, rather than being taken by any other big publisher, and you would not have gotten them back.
Well, it's amazing that they offered you the rights at all.
Yeah, that was interesting. Yeah, that they did that. The only problem was that because we still had so many royalties that were still unpaid. Amazon offered to pay them if you signed their publishing contract. You didn't get anything if you got if you wanted your rights back.
So that was the price for getting the rights back.
Yes.
You would lose the royalties.
Yes.
Ouch.
It was not that bad in my case. I mean, it was enough money, but I know a couple of people who had really a lot of books with Dorchester, and they, whatever they tried to do, they just couldn't get their books back. So for them, it was several $10,000, and that was bad.
Wow.
That was really bad. Yeah.
It's actually kind of amazing that Amazon offered to pay anything.
Yeah. Yeah, that was really interesting. I think that was in 2012. They went through a period where they bought the rights to where several smaller publishers went under, and Amazon Publishing bought the rights to quite a number of books. That was interesting. What was going on?
They were probably trying to build. Basically I don't want to say backlist, but they were probably trying to build a catalog of
that's
books
what I was thinking.
for their imprints. And in 2012, self-publishing still wasn't really big, so they thought they modeled themselves after a publisher, basically, rather than pushing people into self-publishing. That's a fascinating story. I had not heard of it. And I'm sorry you had to go through this.
Oh well, yeah. It was, you know, one of the things it did was that I became really wary about signing up with another publisher. I've talked to friends, and quite a lot of them went through quite a lot of publishers, and in many cases, with most publishers, they had, you know, not so very nice experiences, and it just turned me off traditional publishing, and because I also had to face the fact that everybody I had worked with at Dorchester had been lying to us, and that was another thing that I found very, very difficult to come to terms with. So yeah, that was one of the reasons why I decided no traditional publishing.
I think most people are under the impression that traditional publishing means publishing with Random Penguin in hardback with a $150,000 advance.
Oh my gosh!
You know,
No.
the best traditional publishing experience you can possibly have.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen anymore.
No, especially not when you write genre fiction. I mean, there are. From what I hear, YA is really good, and publishers are treating authors really well. But in other genres, of course, it depends on your status and whether you are a best-selling author or not. But still, I mean, I find it really telling that in the past few years there were so many big-name authors with established authors who decided to turn their backs on traditional publishing and ventured out to do their own thing, and turn down advances, really, really high advances. I think that says a lot about the state of traditional publishing and how frustrated many authors are.
Yeah, I mean, I think the situation is still a little different in Germany compared to the US.
Oh yes,
I think
absolutely.
The market disruption has certainly progressed much, much further in the United States than in Germany. I mean, we do have a few laws that sort of protect the publishers as they are and protect the bookstores and make it harder for indie authors here in Germany. But I think it is simply a matter of time before the market will change here as well.
Yeah. I mean, we always see the beginnings. I mean, we have a couple of really big name indie authors in our country as well. But what always strikes me is the different attitude of published authors. Here in Germany, they are all the published authors I've met. They just would never enter their head to indie publish anything, and yeah, that is quite fascinating to see, and to see that big difference between the US and the German market.
So, is these authors that you're talking to, do they publish in German?
Yes. I in the past few years I went to a reader and writers conference. It is really a readers conference in Berlin, the Love Letter Convention. It's a romance conference, and the nice thing about it is that there are both German authors and international authors, and it's for German readers, so most of it is in German. Except for panel discussions where we have English authors, we do these in English. Yeah, and the German authors I talk to all publish in German. They are all traditionally published, and I had this very interesting conversation with another US indie author, and she started a conversation with a German author, and then she came to me and said, it was very strange, I told them, why don't you indie publish a short story or anything like that? And they were just like, no way. So yeah, there's a whole different attitude towards indie publishing in Germany.
Yeah, there still is. I think here the stigma is still fairly strong. Yeah. And if you talk to people and say you're an indie author, they just can't believe it, because it's still the more common path is using a publisher, and it doesn't have to be a big one. There are many publishers here in Germany, and I'm a hybrid if you want to, because I have been published with a small press traditional publisher, and it wasn't a really good experience. I'm not going to name names here, but this man's idea of marketing is a little strange. And he actually he didn't sell the rights. I'm not even sure if he did sell the rights, but he had a company make an ebook of our novel, so it's now available on Amazon as ebook. And he paid them quite an amount of money. I've never found out how much. And it's priced €9.99. Oh, and I told him, this is not going to work. And he's very upset that it's not selling as an ebook. And I tell him, you need to lower the price. Nobody's going to buy an ebook at that price. Forget it. And he said, no, I paid so much money for it to be converted, and it will cost extra money to change the price. I'm not going to change it until it sells. And I'm like, you're an idiot.
So Sandra, you have been in self-publishing since 2012.
2013.
2013.
Yeah.
I'm guessing you've seen a few changes along the way.
Oh yes, I have. I mean, the biggest shock when I started out in indie publishing, I had taken a 5-year break from writing in order to concentrate on finishing my PhD and stuff like that. And the biggest change when I started again was, oh my God, social media is now all over the place, and so much things. I mean, of course, I had been on Twitter and Facebook before, but still, it was all so very different, and the dynamics between readers and authors have changed considerably, to an extent that I'm sometimes a bit uncomfortable with, because we are constantly, on this plate, and we are constantly on display in a way, and we have to be on display constantly in order to get the word out about our books, and that's sometimes that can be a bit scary if you've got your bad days. The biggest change in the past years I've seen in regard to indie publishing is certainly the amount of recognition it has received. People going from 2011, 2012 was still a time when a lot of people thought, oh, indie publishing, that's not really a good thing, and why do we need that? It's not good quality. And then I went to RWA National, the yearly conference of Romance Writers of America in 2012, and you could feel that energy. Everybody was, talking. There was this buzz in the air, and everybody was talking about indie publishing. And for the first time, we had an indie publishing track, and so they had to get extra chairs because the sessions were so full. So that was definitely a new thing. And I think in 2013, or perhaps it was in 2013, for the very first time at an RWA conference, they have these editor appointments, and for the very first time they had more than 100 appointments, which nobody wanted. And that had never happened before. There had always been a waiting list before. And now for the very first time, people say, oh, you know what, I don't need that traditional publishing. And if they are going to treat us like shit, I don't want anything to do with that. So that was, that has been a really, really big change that I've been seeing.
Have you been affected by the Elora Cove bungle?
The what?
Elora's Cave. Is it Elora's Cave? That was the.
Oh yeah.
Before we get into this, please be very careful when discussing this.
Oh, that's right.
They're just
I
little.
understand. I understand. So let's not get into detail. I'm sorry.
So Alora's Cave, for those of you who don't know this story, is a primarily ebook, but not all, publisher of romance and erotica who last year sued a blogger for a post that she made, and the litigation is still undergoing, and it's crazy. The whole thing is just. Yeah. You can go to Courtney Milan's site and read up on it if you want.
Yeah.
I'll have a link in the show notes.
I haven't really been impacted by that. I mean, I've seen stuff evolve, and I've seen things on Twitter. There's this hashtag not chilled. I've seen that, but I haven't really been affected by it.
Yeah, I was wondering because I mean I think historical romance doesn't exactly fit their
no, not quite. I think they do have a historical line, but when you think of Elora's Cave, you typically think of very sexy books, and while I do have explicit sex in my books, they are, people are not hanging from chandeliers or anything like that. So, it's not really too erotic.
I can't remember who this book was, but I was reading one romance book where I actually had to stop and set up the furniture to go, okay, now how are they doing this? I am not sure this is physically possible.
Yeah. That is also one of the big changes that happened in it already started to happen back in 2005.
Impossibility.
That people, that it gets more and more out there, and you have to do even more outrageous things, which is also a bit weird because while I do enjoy writing love scenes, I typically my love scenes tend to be normally relatively tame compared to what other people write. So that has been an interesting development, the eroticizing of mainstream romance.
Although one of the interesting things, obviously, about indie publishing, and I actually haven't been reading romance at all very much for the past 5 years, is the rise of Amish romance, or there's a whole Deborah Holland was talking about this. Really stuff that publishers would publish because it was too clean. Basically.
Yes, exactly. I think Deborah is a really good example. For years, Westerns were dead. Nobody was touching anything like that, and then she came along with sweet Western historicals, and has found this incredible success, and nobody thought this could happen. So she has really shown that there is this huge market out there for sweet romance that is not necessarily inspirational romance, because that is another big market, the Christian fiction, inspirational romance fiction market, which is quite interesting. On the one hand, hand in hand with the eroticizing of romance, you have this the rise of inspirational romance. It's fascinating how these things evolve.
I'll be honest, I thought inspirational romance was solely an American phenomenon.
Oh yes, I think in many ways it is. The interesting thing is that I think there are a few authors who have been translated into German and have been doing quite well. But I think that the big market really is in the USA.
So, let's talk about the market. Now, I know Hannah, and I know you, and I know another author named Tina Folsom.
Oh, yeah.
All of you are German authors who write in English. I'm guessing there aren't a lot of American writers who write in German. I'm sure that there are some, but... so talk about that. How does that work as a German author writing in English for a different market?
Well, it was basically, for me, it was plan B. I had always dreamed of becoming an author, a published author, and when I was about 19, I started to get serious about publication, and I tried to get information about how to get published, and I just couldn't find anything. The only thing I did find was a handbook for authors with lists of addresses of different publishing houses and some inspirational essays that didn't really help you with any kind of good information. Yeah, it was. I tried a couple of things, and then I also submitted manuscripts to basically all German-speaking, German language publishing houses, and I was collecting rejection slips for several years, and then I finally had to face the fact that I simply wasn't writing the kind of thing that a German publisher would buy from a German author.
Yeah.
And that was the point when I decided, okay, I can either bury this dream or let's try something else. Let's try to write in English. That was the only other language I could speak tolerably well. And so, yeah, in 2000, I started my first novel in English. I was incredibly lucky to back then to find an online authors group who were very, very helpful, and they really helped me to find my voice in English. Yeah, and it kind of grew from there. And I have to say, of course, there were people. I saw that especially at university. There were a number of colleagues who told me, "Oh, you will never be able to compete with native speakers. You will never be able to reach your full potential if you write in a second language." I just say, "Oh,
Vladimir Nabokov.
Yeah, what rubbish! By now I'm writing.
Umberto Eco. Okay, please continue. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm writing by now. I'm writing better than I ever did in German. So yeah, I proved paper wrong. It was really, it was such a revelation. I kind of discovered romance, the existence of romance, at the same time as I decided to start writing in English, and I kind of switched genres along the way. And it was also such a revelation to see the kind of the companionship and that community that exists among English-speaking authors, something that we don't have in Germany.
And I have to say that it's very difficult. I know one group which is more supportive than most, which are the Geschichtenweber, which are, you may have heard of them. But even the Facebook groups of German indie authors, there's so much snark and sarcasm and hitting each other and bad-mouthing people. I don't post there on principle because I do not want to enter that energy. So
yeah.
That's a huge cultural difference between authors in Germany and authors in the US. And honestly, it's one of the reasons why I feel quite comfortable writing in English, because the support is amazing.
Yeah, it is, absolutely. I always say that I don't think I would have made it without the Ladies of Lallybroch Literary Forum, which was the group I started out in. They were just, so wonderful and so helpful. And even now, a very good example is my call story. When I got the call as a result of winning in a writing contest, and Chris Kiesler had judged the final round of that contest, and he asked for the whole manuscript. And in early 2004, he first sent an email, and then he called me, and he faxed me the contract. And I remember I was sitting in our secretary's office at university reading that contract late in the evening when everybody else had already gone home, and I was crying my eyes out because I couldn't understand it. I got in touch with, it was really poor. I didn't have an agent. I couldn't understand the contract. Oh my gosh. I got in touch with two of my published author friends, and within 2 hours, I had a list of agents whom I could contact, and for each agent, I had a door opener. I had a name of one of their clients whom I could say, so-and-so had sent me, I'm looking for an agent. And even days later, people whom I never met online or in real life would send me emails saying, oh, I've heard that you're looking for an agent. You can contact so-and-so. And that outpouring of help, I thought that was really incredible. And I still get slightly choked up when I think about it now, because it's something very unusual for this to happen. And this is also one of the reasons I'm very glad I'm writing romance, because there is this strong community and of people writing and people helping each other out. So that's a nice thing.
That's one of the funniest, truest things I've ever heard, which is people always say, oh, you need to know somebody. And it's like, if you have something people want, you will suddenly know so many people. You have no idea. It is the easiest thing in the world is to meet people. The hard thing is to do it first, to do your part first. And that is one thing that I write mysteries. And there is no indie mystery upswell the way that there has been with romance. Pretty much every indie board I've been on has been dominated, at least the success stories have been dominated by romance authors.
Well, come over to the dark side, Diane.
I was once walking around a lake with a friend of mine, and she said, oh, I read this really great article in the paper, and it was about a guy who found a ring in a piece of luggage or something. I don't remember what it was. And she's like, and she starts spinning this whole romance tale about it, and I, of course, am wondering who killed who. So it's just how your brain is wired, I guess. Okay, so I want to hear about your path since 2013. You got your backlist from Dorchester. Yeah. You got covers. You put it up. I just listened to an interview with Liliana Hart, and she talked about 2012 or 2013 as being the monopoly money years, where you could pretty much put anything up on Amazon and you were going to make money. And it has gotten harder since then because everyone wants in on it. What has your path been like over the past 2.5 years?
It's been a bit difficult because I had a lot of stuff going on in my, in my other life, and there were a couple of really bad things happening with my day job. So for me in 2013, the really important thing was to start writing again and to find that spark again, because that had been missing for 5 years. So I was really happy about that. One of the keys in all the success stories is that people were putting or have been putting books out on a regular basis, and ideally within 3 months time span. I haven't really been so very consistent, and I haven't done a lot of promotion for my books, which is one of the reasons why I am not doing all that well. But so I am not one of the success stories. I'm still kind of sliding low, flying low. I hope that in the next months that I can focus more closely on my writing career and kind of putting new spark in there as well.
Yeah, I have to say that the idea of having to publish every, somebody was saying 28 days.
Oh my God. Yeah.
You can't. I think you can't do it with novels, but you probably can do it with short erotica serials. You can probably put one out every 28 days. I think that would work if you have 12,000 word stories, maybe 15,000 word stories. I can see that happening in a month, but I think that's ridiculous. And 3 months is still pretty grueling.
Yeah. It is. I mean, especially when you, I like doing research. I like research a lot. I tend to get lost. I tend to get lost in research, and I'm a relatively slow writer. So yeah, to finish, I mean, I can finish. In last year I managed to finish novellas in within a 3 months period. So I had 3 novellas out that year, but then you know, life happened again. Life hit me over the head again, and that was that. Yeah, it's just sometimes it's just very difficult to kind of balance those things and to kind of balance, you know, what's going on in your life, what's going on with your family, with the writing. And I've never been somebody who's been very good at writing through stress or writing through grief. You know, and on the contrary, my muse usually takes a holiday when I'm really in big trouble, and it usually takes me a while to get back into the writing mojo. So that is something I've really been struggling with. But at the moment, I'm really happy that I'm putting books out, and that I've got that back. Because that's been missing for so many years.
Do you outsource a lot of the process?
I have. I found a lovely editor. I'm so happy with that. I was really worried after. I loved working with Chris Kiesler at Dorchester. He is an incredible editor. He really understands stories, and he has this ability to put his finger on any weaknesses in your story. All his authors feared his revision requests because they were so long, 4 pages, single-spaced or more. It could be quite frustrating, but you know, that really taught me about how the whole editing process worked, and I could always trust him to tell me what was wrong with my story. I could always trust him to make suggestions to make my stories better. And I was really worried that I wouldn't find that with indie publishing, and I'm happy to say I didn't find it. So I have this wonderful editor I use for developmental edits, and I typically also have somebody. Then I revise my manuscript and then copy edit again. Yes, I do my own covers. I started last winter. I started dabbling in digital 3D art, and I've started to kind of revise my covers and use my own digital art on them. Yeah, I do the formatting myself. Yeah. Do that myself.
What do you use to write in?
I use Word, so nothing fancy. I use Word or my normal notebook. Writing by hand. That is also something that I do.
Oh, I can't write by hand. I mean, I can, but those scenes usually never make it into the story because typing them is such a chore.
Wow, yeah. I wrote the last book I published. I wrote that completely by hand because it was just easier that way. But typing it up was so horrible. But on the other hand, I could kind of add it as I went along, as I typed, so that was a good thing. With the book I'm working on at the moment, I kind of try to balance things out. So I try to get back to, do more things, either on the computer in Word, or I also have an Alpha Smart, which I love, and I use that also a lot.
So do you use a special program for your formatting? Sorry.
I use Juto.
Okay, yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah, I use that. I'm quite happy with it. The ebooks have always been good. the results have always been good. And I for Create Space, I added in Word and do fancy things. That's one of the nice things about indie publishing. You can do fancy things with your print books. You can add little ornaments around your page numbers, and you can use frontispieces, and it's like, oh, all the possibilities. So yeah.
Well, have you considered changing what you write because of what's happening in indie publishing? I know some authors are talking about moving to different genres, whatever the popular genres are. Some are writing shorter, writing novella series, etc., etc.
Yeah, one of the reasons why I started my Victorian series last year was because I wanted to try out the novella format, and I will keep up with that because I love that series so much. I know that a lot of historical romance authors are moving into contemporary romance because that sells so much better at the moment. I'm not quite sure whether I'd be able to pull off a contemporary romance. Not quite sure whether I'd be able to do that. I've thought about changing what I write. At one point, I even thought about starting to write erotica, but to be honest, I love my genre too much. And in the past few years, I had a very limited writing time, and so I thought, okay, I'm going to write the stories that I want to write, and that the stories that I have in my heart, and try to find an audience for them. And try to get emotionally and to a better place, and that has been working out quite nicely. I have to say. I mean, last year people talked me on Twitter. People talked me into writing a romance set in Rome, and because I had somebody mentioned, oh, there are so few romances set in ancient Rome, and I was like, I really like Rosemary Sutcliffe. Of course, she doesn't write romance, but and I do live near an ancient reconstructed Roman fort, and everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, you could write a romance set in Rome." I was like, let me think about that. Oh, that sounds like fun. And so I was off and started.
Tell us the name of the fort, because we can put that into the show notes.
Or contemporary?
Sorry?
Was this historical Rome or contemporary?
Oh, that was historical Rome. So that was another historical.
Which time period? Republic or
Empire. So I have this kind of whole series planned, stretching from Caesar's Gallic Wars to the fall of the Germanic Limes in 260. And the first novel that I published earlier this summer, that's set in the time of the building of Hadrian's Wall.
Okay. I love ancient Rome fiction.
It's the funny, as I said before, I love Rosemary Sutcliffe. I love her books so much, and she has been such a huge influence on my writing. And I thought, okay, let's do this ancient Rome thing. Of course, what I hadn't thought of is that I had to do research on every single thing. And of course, I had learned about the gods and goddesses before, but oh my gosh, there were so many things I just didn't know. That was quite a journey. That was quite an adventure, but I really enjoyed it. I learned an awful lot.
That's interesting, because I have a friend who wrote a novel, and I think it's a romance novel set in the Egyptian Empire, and tried to market it to the German publishers, and they all told her, forget Egyptian, forget Rome, just write medieval romances, that's what's selling. So she wrote a medieval romance, and it had a really stupid name. It got published, and she got a publisher for it, and it was one of those generic, there's a German bestseller. It's called The Wandering Whore.
Oh God, yes.
And like it happens in the US, that one was a bestseller, and you would get dozens and dozens of books with very similar titles, very similar stories, and she sort of got into the end of that rush. And I don't think her second novel, she wrote it, the agent told her to write it, and I think it didn't sell. So so that was an interesting thing. And I don't know if she ever got her Egyptian romance published, and that's a shame because she writes really well.
Yeah, it's really difficult to market, to find readers for anything outside Regency and Victorian Britain. I remember when my agent tried to sell my second novel, which is set in Germany, in the Black Forest, she got rejections because there was one publisher who actually considered taking it, but then they said, "Oh well, we already have an author who writes books set in Germany, so we can't do another one." It's like,
oh no, two.
Oh my goodness!
So I went back to Dorchester. Yeah, but there is this very strong preference for British set historical romances, especially in the Regency and the Victorian era. Now the Edwardian era as well, thanks to Downton Abbey. That has been very popular as well.
But of course, if you write romance set in ancient Rome, that is a very nice niche category where you would probably be very visible. So
yeah, I hope so.
I'd have an advantage.
So
yeah, I know 3 or 4 mystery series set during the same time period in ancient Rome. So there is probably room for more.
Yeah, I remember the German Young A series set in ancient Rome. That was Young A Mysteries. I don't know. Did you ever read those, Sandra? Lucius? Yeah, I never owned
I read
them.
Caius der Lausbub aus dem alten Rom. Did you read that? By
No,
Harry
I don't.
Winterfeld. So, but these were really, I think they were not even middle grade. I read those when I was in primary school, so that kind of started me on the whole historical fiction thing. Made me fall in love with historical fiction.
There are 2 things I really want to ask, but Diane, do you have any other questions first?
Well, I want to ask, do you translate your own stuff into German?
I haven't yet done any translations, but yes, I plan to do my own translations.
Someone, I think maybe it was still that Liliana Hart interview, and that was on Joanna Penn's podcast, was talking about how translations, I guess as a whole, send it off to a translator and then put it up on the German market, are not turning out to be as big a thing as everyone thought they were going to be, or the market has softened. But it seems like it would still be a good thing if you're doing your own. Anyhow,
yes,
I know Tina Folsom does her own.
Yes,
so if you
and I think I think she's making good money with her German translations. Yeah. I know a couple of other authors, indie authors, who've done German translations, and they are making nice money. I think it really depends on the genre. There are a couple of genres that just don't do well in Germany. Mm-hmm. But I know that Courtney Milan, for example, she has been quite successful with her historical romances on the German market. So there is definitely room for that.
Right. No, go ahead, Hannah. What do you want to ask?
Well, my first question is about structure, because I'm dabbling in romance very recently, and I did some research, and I think I've discovered a few rules about the structure, but the thing that strikes me is that romance especially has very, I don't want to say strict, but very clear expectations of how a story has to progress in order to fulfill the expectations of the average reader. And You're our expert for that.
Well, I think that the most important thing, and that is something that tends to be difficult to explain to people who are coming in new to the genre. You know, at least when you're writing for the US market, you have to have a happy ending. You cannot kill off your main characters. You know, they cannot die nicely on top of a tower pierced by the arrows of their enemies. That's a no-go. Readers really want this happy ending. You can put your characters through as much angst and horrible stuff you can imagine in the course of your story, but at the end you have to have this emotion, what I think Adolier calls this emotionally uplifting ending. This is the pact that you as an author make with the reader. You know, I'm going to introduce to you these two people, sometimes more than two people. I'm going to introduce to you these two people. They're going to fall in love. I'm going to put them through a whole lot of shit, but at the end, everything will be fine. And, you know, even though you might cry in the middle, and even though you might, oh my God, think, oh my God, this is never going to work out, it will be fine at the end, and I will leave you with this big smile on your face. I think that is one of the most important things about romance. Yeah.
Interestingly, romances, in order to have what's considered a deeper story, you actually have a tragic ending, and these are usually written by men. Nicholas Sparks novels, Love Story by Eric Siegel. And of course Titanic.
Yeah.
So that's you know, deep and tragic, whereas that's one of the reasons that romance, I heard or read, now I can't remember, an entire analysis of this.
Which is why I hated The Horse Whisperer. It's tragic, and I read this and I thought, no, this feels so wrong. You can't do that.
Yeah. I think there is one of the problems is that there is this big prejudice against happy endings. I mean, you could, if you look at the whole history of literature, you know, tragedy has always been valued much more than comedy. And of course, romance is a genre that is written predominantly by women, predominantly for women, so that adds to the negative side.
It's like not important. It's not literature. It's less valuable.
Yeah. Okay. So, and yeah, a lot of I know that a lot of critics accuse the genre of being fluffy, but if you look at it, of course there are fluffy books in that genre, but when you look at the genre more closely, you will find books that tackle a lot of problems, that tackle things like, you know, going through different stages of grief, losing a parent, you know, alcoholism, drug addiction, losing a child, all these things that are you know, dealt with in the genre. And it's just, you know, there is that happy ending at the end. You're going to leave your reader with a smile instead of in tears, and yeah.
You know,
more about the structure. More about the structure.
More about the structure. Well, actually, there are. I don't really think there is a specific structure you have to stick to. I mean, if you look. Well, normally there is, you know, two people falling in love, there are all kinds of obstacles thrown their way, and there typically comes some kind of dark moment towards the end where it appears that everything will go wrong, and then just right as you thought, oh my God, this is horrible, you know, the tide turns, and it's sketching, you know, you're hurtling towards the happy ending. Another thing that's quite important for the US audience is that there is some character development, that the characters learn something. and that when finally at the end of the novel you have two characters who are stronger than before and who are wiser than before. They have learned their lesson, and they have learned about love along the way. I think that is the most important thing. And of course you have in romance, just like in any other genre fiction, you have specific tropes that readers love. So, for example, everybody loves in romance loves a good alpha male, this very dominant, often very dark hero, brooding, marching through his castle and gloomily.
There's some publisher, maybe more than one, but I heard about one specific publisher that will give a list of tropes to their authors and say, use one or two of these in your book. So there are lists of tropes out there.
Oh my god! But Dorchester never did that, actually.
It doesn't surprise me.
That was a good thing about our publishing house, because they took, as I said before, they took risks on stories. They published unusual stories, and not. You see that with certain publishers that they are kind of moving towards a kind of cookie cutter thing. Dorchester didn't really do that. So that was nice. Yeah, there are always things that work incredibly well. When you look, and the interesting thing is, in certain tropes work better in specific formats. For example, Secret Babies, those work best in Mills and Boon, Harlequin Mills and Boon books. They don't really work all that well outside the confinements of serious romance. Same with amnesia stories.
What stories?
Amnesia stories.
Amnesia. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, amnesia. And then you also have things like enemies to lovers. That is a nice one. Another thing that's quite popular, especially in historical romance, are books that have an underlying fairy tale story. Beauty and the Beast is incredibly popular. Yeah. So
I was going to say, if you set a novel in the Black Forest, that would just seem to lend itself to fairy tales.
That was a Beauty and the Beast story. Yes, that was a Gothic romance. It was intended as a Gothic romance. Kind of Gothicness got stumped to dust in the course of the story. But that was Beauty and the Beast tale. And I loved writing that. I grew up in the Black Forest. I spent my primary school years there, and it was really nice to revisit all those memories and to bring that back. And because the forests there are really deep and dark and kind of eerie, so that was nice.
And it's amazing. They're probably a tenth of the size that they were during the Middle Ages, because of there's been development since then. So.
Yeah,
somewhat. And the final question I always like to ask, because I'm a mindset coach, I always ask, what would you say is the most important mindset that an indie author needs to have or develop?
Preservation is really important. You have to realize that you won't get rich quick when you go into this. Of course, there are stories about people who got incredible success right from the start, but those stories are really, not the norm. You have to preserve. You have to make sure that you put out really good content, good stories, and you have to take into consideration that it might take a while until you find your audience. I think that is the most important thing, to realize that. And you have to, of course you can be in it for the profit, but I think when you create art and when you create literature of any kind, you also have to be in it with your heart, because after a while I don't think it would be possible to write really good books without being in it with your heart, and writing stories that come from your heart. I think readers can tell the difference. You can touch readers on a much deeper level when you give something of yourself on the pages of your books.
And what is your latest novel that people can find?
Well, I just put out my my very first novel again. The Lily Brand has just been re-released in digital, and you can find that. It's very dark. I was in a really bad mood when I wrote that novel. So yeah, it's again, it's a thing that's very close to my heart. And
I have to say, I read it, and while it's dark, it does have the typical romance ending.
Yes, it does, and it has a very sweet gay secondary couple. I really love those two guys so much.
I mean, that's the contract that you make with your readers. If you put it under romance, you're offering them a happy ending.
Yes.
And that's actually one of the great pieces of advice from a screenwriter named Ted Talley, who wrote Silence of the Lambs, among other things. The screenplay, not the book, obviously. You really ending your story on a complete downer breaks a contract with. You have to give your reader some kind of hope that things. Yeah. We're all alive. We all know what it's like out in the real world.
Yeah. And you don't really want to annoy romance readers.
Oh yeah.
They can get really pissed off if they don't like something, and if an author breaks the contract, the author will hear about it. Yeah. And it's just something that I love about the romance genre is how life-affirming it is, and when you hear so many stories from readers who, when they are troubled, or when they when they have to tend to a dying family member, they go and read romance, and it uplifts them, and it for a little while it makes them forget all their troubles. And I think that is something that is really incredible, to this realization that you can give people, that you can give readers this present and this gift. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Sandra. This has been really wonderful.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great fun.
So, do you want to do the out?
I don't think I've ever done it, but I can do it. So we've reached the end of today's podcast. I hope you had some fun with it. If you like it, please leave a review or tell others about it. I'm Hannah Steinbach, and with me is
Diane Patterson, and our very special guest has been
Sandra Schwab.
And thank you for joining us. We will talk to you soon. Tschüss.
Tschüss.
Tschüss.